Piece by Piece, retold by S.E. Schlosser. There was once a crazy ghost over Poughkeepsie Way that got folks so plumb scared that nobody would stay more than one night in its house. It was a nice old place, or was, until the ghost began making its presence known. It got so no one would enter the house, not even kids on a dare, and you know what they are like. Now, when my friend Joe heard a fancy old house in Poughkeepsie was selling dirt cheap, he decided to go have a look. He asked me about it, and I told him about the spook, but Joe just laughed. "I don't believe in ghosts," he said, and went to visit the agent selling the house. Well, the agent gave Joe a key, but refused to look at the old house with him, which should have told Joe something. But Joe's a stubborn man who won't listen to reason. He even waited until after dark to visit the house for the first time, just to prove his point. Joe got to the house around 9 p.m., and he entered the front hallway. It was a large entrance and well-proportioned, but neglected-looking, with creepy cobwebs and dust everywhere. As Joe paused near the door to get his bearings, he heard a thump from the top of the staircase facing him. A glowing leg appeared out of nowhere and rolled down the steps, landing right next to Joe's feet. Joe gasped out loud and stood frozen to the spot. An arm appeared and rolled down to meet the leg. Next came a foot, then another arm, then a hand. Glowing pieces of body kept popping into existence and plummeting down the steps towards Joe. Joe held his ground a lot longer than anyone else ever had, but when a screaming head appeared at the top of the steps and started rolling towards him, Joe had had enough. With a shriek that could wake the dead, those that weren't already up and haunting the house, that is, Joe ran for his life, out of the house, out of the street, and right out of town, leaving his car behind him. He called me the next day and asked me to drive his car down to the hotel where he'd spent the night. Joe was headed back to Manhattan and refused to come within 50 miles of Poughkeepsie ever again. The agent gave up trying to sell the house after that, and the house fell into ruin and was eventually torn down.
Pecos Bill and the Haunted House, retold by S.E. Schlosser. Well now, Pecos Bill was traveling through Nevada when he happened to hear about a frame house just outside Carson City that was supposed to be the most haunted house in the West. Folks about town reckoned that there were nearly 200 ghosts, spooks, and monsters in that house. Not a single man had stepped foot in it for the last 5 years. The ghosts and spooks in that haunted house made so much noise, howling and shrieking and groaning at night, that no one in the neighborhood could get any sleep. Most of the families had already moved away. Pecos Bill thought it was a crying shame that such a nice frame house was going to waste on account of a few spooks, so he volunteered to clear them out for the owner. The owner told Bill he was plumb crazy to consider it. "But if you can do it, I'll give you my share in the silver mine," said the chap. That suited Bill just fine. Pecos Bill waited until it was real dark before he went to the haunted house. He wanted to make sure that all the ghosts were present so he could clean up the whole house in one go. As he waited for the ghosts to come out, Bill filled his 6-shooter with silver bullets, because everyone in the West knows that werewolves can only be killed by silver bullets. The full moon peeped over the horizon. Inside the house, several ghosts started a moaning and a groaning. A banshee rose right up through the roof and howled dramatically as it waved its arms about. Bill watched the banshee swoop out over the roof and fly right through the front door. Around the side of the house, the ground split open and a group of skeletons came clattering out onto the grass. They rattled and shook their way into the house, climbing in a window that a mummy held open. The howling and shrieking and groaning from the house was deafening. Pecos Bill decided that most of the ghosts and spooks and monsters were out and about by now, so he sauntered up the walk and opened the front door. As soon as Pecos Bill entered the front hallway, the air was filled with a loud "oh!" A banshee flew right at Bill, its red eyes burning, claws extended. Bill stepped aside at the last minute, and the banshee sailed right past him and got caught halfway through a tree. "One down, 199 to go," Bill reckoned. Something groaned in the corner of the entryway. A mummy emerged, arms outstretched, reaching for Pecos Bill. Bill grabbed hold of a loose bandage and whirled the mummy around so fast it became unwrapped and retreated back to its corner in embarrassment. A pack of werewolves came running down from the second floor, determined to swallow Pecos Bill. But Bill was the fastest shot in the West. He pulled out his 6-shooter and shot all 6 werewolves lickety-split. Several dozen banshees had followed the werewolves down the steps. Bill bashed their heads together, boom, 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 and threw them out the front door after the first banshee. Then he ambled into the front room and sweet-talked 10 hags into turning respectable. There came a long, unearthly howl from the back room. A giant demon hound with one flaming red eye raced toward Bill. Bill jumped right on its back, and the hound bucked and twisted even worse than Bill's horse Widowmaker on a bad day. But Bill had once ridden a tornado, so a demon hound, even one the size of an elephant, posed no problems for him. Finally, the hound collapsed to the floor and lay at Bill's feet, wagging its giant tail. Pecos Bill was getting bored. There just wasn't enough of a challenge for him, taking on the spooks a few at a time. So Bill got out his lasso, and he roped 100 of them ghosts all at once. He dragged them down the street to the cemetery and forced them back into the grave. Returning to the frame house, Pecos Bill found the skeletons dancing in the kitchen. He decided to join in and waltz them around and around so fast that they broke apart. A couple dozen zombies tried to chase Pecos Bill out of the house, but Bill just stood at the top of the steps and knocked them down one by one until they lay in a heap in the hallway.